My 23 male parents, 43 male and 45 female, divorced when I was 8. I stayed with my dad full-time and visited my mom 2 weekends a month. My dad stayed single for all my childhood and adolescence. I met Josh, 34 male, 1.5 years ago because he was my boss at the company I started working half-time for while finishing college, same field. Josh and I started getting along so well and hanging out, I even met his wife, Mary, 30, a couple of times. Well, for my 22nd birthday, I decided to throw a party and invite Josh and Mary to come. My dad was there too, of course, and I introduced them to him. They shook hands, shared some info, and that was it. That was their whole interaction during my birthday party. Like 2 weeks later, Josh came to me saying that my dad was amazing and a fun dude and then let me know that he and his wife, had some beers with him. From that point, they became best friends. My dad would constantly go to their house on weekends to have some grill or whatever. They also invited me, but I never went. 3 months ago, Josh told me that my dad was an idiot and a homewrecker who seduced his wife to cheat on him and got her pregnant. I called my dad to know what was going on and he told me that Mary left Josh to be with my dad because they had an affair and she was pregnant, and also told me that they loved each other. I found out that they'd been having an affair for a year almost immediately after they met for the first time. They plan to get married after the twin babies, boy and girl, are born and Mary's divorce is finalized. Not going to lie, I feel guilty because if I hadn't invited Mary and Josh, they would have never met my dad and this wouldn't have happened. But I can't look at my dad the same way I did. He went after a married woman who had a twin son. I know he's a great dad to me and I love him very much, and I know he'll be a great stepdad and dad to these new children, but I just can't look at him the same way I did. So I still talk to him, but I try to keep my distance as much as possible. He invited me to their baby shower, but I said I couldn't go because I didn't feel comfortable. He asked me why, so I said, "Dad, to be honest, I can't look at you the same way. You went after a married woman with a child. You got her pregnant and now want to act as if nothing has happened." He told me this doesn't affect me in any way and that his love life shouldn't be my problem, but I had to quit the job since Josh had become insufferable. My mom and friends say that I should support my dad because I don't know what Josh's and Mary's relationship was like, which is true, I don't, but I can't help but feel guilty and sorry for Josh. Not the idiot. He slept with your boss's wife and you quit your job because your boss blamed you. He can't pull the "it's none of your business" card when he aimed his adultery at your career, the audacity. I hate to break it to you, but great dads don't sleep with the spouse of their child's boss. Great dads don't intentionally nuke a young boy's family. Great dads don't try to rug sweep their own atrocious behavior. Unfortunately, he has not been a great dad as of late. Boy, your mom and her friends are wrong. It doesn't matter what Josh and Mary's marriage was like. What matters is that your dad slept with a married woman, got her pregnant, caused a family to crumble, and screwed you out of a job. It probably would have happened with someone else. Their marriage was not that solid if she was so quickly able to cheat. No one can steal someone else's spouse. A spouse is a person, not an object. They have free will. They're the ones cheating. This Mary is wholly responsible for her own situation. She could have said no at any time. Of course she chose to cheat. But OP's father played the best friend card with OP's boss to get closer to his wife. It is a far more idiotic move, seducing a married woman when you know her husband. Especially when the husband is your son's boss and he's the one who introduced you. I understand why OP has lost respect for his father. If I were in your shoes, I would never have anything to do with my dad again. That is an awkward position to put you in. And it's not fair to you that he used your birthday party to pick up on another man's wife. I have female 32, have a friend who we'll call Ellie, female 32. I've known Ellie since we were around 7. Our mothers are good friends. Ellie has had a very, very privileged life. Her dad is a lawyer, and her mom is a dentist. So, as you can imagine, Ellie had many more luxuries and opportunities than your average person. She grew up attending private schools, having private tutors, going on fancy vacations every year, etc. I won't go into too much detail, but I didn't have a life like Ellie's. Ellie never had to get a job until she went into residency in medical school when she was 26. When we finished high school at 18, Ellie initially went to business school for 2 years before dropping out, then pursuing medical school. Her parents paid her tuition and living expenses, so Ellie never struggled financially and never had to worry about money. Plus, her mother got Ellie volunteering opportunities so she could get references on her medical school applications. Ellie is now a qualified pediatrician. I'm glad she was able to find a career path she enjoys, and I'm proud of her for finishing school. I know medical school is no walk in the park. I'm a veterinarian. A few weeks ago, we went to a town event, and we bumped into some of my old friends from high school. We chatted for a few minutes, and one of them proudly mentioned she had finished nursing school. When we went to my house afterward, Ellie made a very rude comment about my old friend, saying I bet she was just too dumb to go to medical school, and went on about how great she is. I told Ellie that what she said was rude and uncalled for. Ellie said it was the truth. I snapped and told Ellie, you only became a doctor by getting handouts. You don't get to make comments about other people. Ellie started yelling at me and telling her that I was a jerk for undermining her hard work, and that she still had to work for where she was now. I told her that I knew she still had to work hard, but most people don't have parents who can pay all their tuition and living expenses, and she had it easier. Ellie called me a jerk again and said that I was ignorant and that she still had to work hard. Not the idiot. Many people aren't intelligent enough for medical school, but can only dream of becoming doctors due to classes barriers in place. Many medical schools have rules against students having jobs during their studies. Ellie sounds naive and sheltered. Her comment was insulting and unnecessary. Nurses are essential for medical establishments to function. Ellie's looking down on a profession that medical facilities need to work. She makes doctors look bad. Unfortunately, when it comes to higher education, intelligence and hard work frequently aren't enough. So, her comment isn't even true. Ellie had to work hard at medical school. Ellie did not have to work hard in life. Ain't when people don't acknowledge their privilege. Her comment was very nasty and uncalled for. So, good on you for calling her out. I keep getting into an argument with my wife, and it keeps getting worse. We are due to have our first child, our first together. She has 3 older children that live with us later this month. I bought tickets for a concert approximately 3 weeks after her delivery date, if we make it that far. And she keeps accusing me of not caring for wanting to go to it, saying she can't believe I care more about a concert than our daughter. And how could I want to leave her? I told her that one night out shouldn't be that big of a deal. I'm already using 6 weeks of paid time off I've accumulated at my job to be there when the baby's born, to be around full time. And one night away for a few hours shouldn't be that big of a deal. To be fair, there are also a few football games my family has season tickets to that I said I'd still like to go to, but not all of them. But getting away for a while would probably be good to refocus with the stress of a new baby. In that same vein, I've kept telling her that I can take care of the baby so she can get out from time to time if it's an hour or an afternoon. And before this became a problem, I also bought her tickets for a concert about 2 weeks after the one I'm going to. So about 5 weeks after delivery, where I purchased her sit-down seats to attend because it's one of her favorite artists. I told her I'd take care of the baby for the night and she could go with her mom and enjoy the concert. But instead she says she won't be going because she couldn't leave the baby and doesn't understand how I'm just okay leaving the baby for an evening. Am I an idiot and unreasonable for wanting some planned time away to recoup? Oh dear, are you serious? You are the idiot because your plan for each of you to go to concerts right after your baby is due is dangerous, not just ignorant. You do know that your newborn can't be vaccinated, right? So for the first 2 months, your newborn baby is especially vulnerable. You may not know, but recovering from childbirth takes weeks to months. Childbirth is a major medical event. Do you care about your baby or your wife? Buddy, no. You think you'll need a break 3 weeks after she gives birth, but she doesn't get one? Unless you have support lined up for her while you take the night off. Unquestionably, 100% you are the idiot. She'll need you home. You have no idea what life will be like 3 weeks postpartum. My oldest was still in NICU, which was completely unexpected. I would have divorced my ex-husband sooner if he'd gone away during that time. You're making many plans when you have no idea what your life will look like after the baby's here. I feel so bad for your wife. Paternity and maternity leave is not vacation time. To start with, I worked for a salary as soon as it was legal for me to do so in the UK. I reached a point in my life and career where after bills and savings, I can afford stuff like designer jewelry, bags, shoes, etc. That hasn't always been the case. My family's Asian, and since they got married, my parents have fully supported my dad's family and given financial help to my mom's parents when they needed it. It wasn't unusual for my parents to take me shopping every 3 to 4 months to buy new clothes for my cousins while I got hand-me-downs or second-hand clothes from charity shops and car boot sales. Even when I started earning money, I would have to put it into my parents' account and only get back £10 to £20 a week. Meanwhile, my cousins could ask for new phones, styling products, bikes, etc., and it would be bought for them. So, while as a household, we were probably making enough income to count as middle class, we were ourselves living frugally. This continued well into when I began uni. Around that time, however, my uncle's wife started making comments about my parents paying for their kids' university fees, weddings, and them inheriting the house they lived in, which is jointly owned by my parents and has been willed to me. That was the wake-up call they needed to realize that they were going beyond just helping out their family in need but were actually funding their lifestyle while effectively depriving themselves. After I paid off my student loans and had enough saved for a deposit on a property, I realized I had enough to treat myself, so I started to buy some of the mentioned designer goods. I guess my cousins saw stuff on my IG and started messaging me, along with their mother, to harass me, saying that they had been forced to get jobs while I'm just splashing my cash on things I don't need. I can indeed send them money, but I want to have nice things for myself for once. Does that make me the idiot? Not the idiot. You might want to pass all these messages to your parents, with the caption, "Now they want me to send them all my money too." They are parasites. Tell your cousin you also had to get a job to afford the things you bought. If they want designer crap, they can earn it just like you did. Cut off these leeches. They will not stop drinking your blood on their own. Get your tiny violin and play them the saddest song you know. OP, this is survivor's guilt. You are absolutely not responsible for what money they have available to them. You've done well for yourself through hard work and prudent savings. It would be best if you work through any guilt you might have. Enjoy the life you've made for yourself, and you deserve it, not the moochers. Maybe you should treat your parents to some nice things, since they also didn't get the chance to enjoy luxuries. I'm not saying you have to, but it would be nice, since they were being taken advantage of for so long. No, don't treat your parents to anything. They deprived you, their child, so that your cousins could live it up. Honestly, this is insane. Providing the extended family with brand new clothes, while their kids get secondhand stuff and hand-me-downs. Confiscating that kid's earnings to give to extended family? I'm on board with the notion that family helps family, and that relatives step up to provide a safety net in extraordinary circumstances. However, in this case, OP's relatives don't want a safety net, they want a hammock. My 56th female, youngest son, 30, recently married his wife, 29. We live in different states, and usually only see each other for holidays, etc. Our son's elder brother, 33, was recently diagnosed with autism. While our younger son, and now wife, daughter-in-law were still dating, he brought her home to us so we could meet her. She's always been a little off. She's shy and awkward, and prefers doing stuff on a computer to being outdoors. My husband and I are very outdoorsy, and live a very active life, so I guess we clashed a bit there. She's always been nice, and in the beginning, she participated in many of our activities, even if she wasn't great at them. After his diagnosis, she comforted our elder son, which was a hard blow for all of us. She said she also felt awkward and weird at times, and that it was okay to be different. I suspected maybe she meant this as a way of telling us that she was on the spectrum too. About 2 years ago, they had their first kid. They had some issues conceiving and lost a baby before having their daughter. She's a great kid, and we love her so much. However, since their daughter was born, my daughter-in-laws become even more awkward around us. We invited them over to celebrate the 4th of July. Daughter-in-law was tired, and didn't participate in any outdoor activities, but instead insisted on working on the computer, while our son was the one playing with his daughter outdoors. I asked her what was she doing in front of the screen all the time, and she told me she was just catching up on work. This just seemed off to me, because why wouldn't she want to play outside with her husband and kid? So, my husband and I spoke privately about our worries that she's not participating in her daughter's childhood, and leaving it all to her husband. We both agreed that we should talk to her about it. After dinner, yes, drinks were involved. I went away to do the dishes, and heard raised voices. When I returned to the table, daughter-in-law was crying as my husband told her off quite sharply. He said some things that might have been a bit harsh, but nothing untrue. She stormed off crying instead of discussing the issue further. I followed her to try and discuss the situation, and told her we were just worried about her, them as a couple, and their daughter. This was when I told her I thought she should seek help or counseling for autism, as I figured that was why she was struggling with motherhood. She was highly offended, and told me that she was not autistic, but suffering from PPD. They packed their bags and left in a hurry. Later we saw that she had unfriended my husband and me on Facebook, and blocked us from messaging her. They haven't spoken a word to us since. Our son is apparently furious, according to his brother. We can't reach out to explain our side of things now that we're both blocked. Both of us meant well, and it came from a place of worry for our grandchild. Am I the idiot? Let me drop a bug in your ear. This woman finds you and your husband just about as obnoxious as the rest of us on this thread. She forces herself to attend family functions, so her husband can see his parents, and you and your husband can spend time with your grandchild. That's why she gets on her computer and works, to spare herself the unpleasantness of spending time with you. I'll read between the lines. Your husband had a few drinks, and decided to harass your daughter-in-law. You didn't mind because you agreed with what he said. I don't think your son will give your husband another chance to play tipsy narc with her, or you another opportunity to go right behind him, tearing her down some more. Good for them. You are the idiot in every conceivable way. Your son and daughter-in-law have gone no contact. No contact means just that, no contact. You're a busybody, and your husband made your son's wife cry. Actions have consequences. Your actions cut you off from your son and grandchild. How are you surprised that this is the outcome? Good luck with never seeing your The cops told me to sit down, that they needed a statement. I couldn't focus on anything but the clock. Tick, tick, tick. Every second felt like an hour with her gone. We understand this is difficult, sir, some lady officer said. But we need to know exactly what happened. What happened, that's the thing. What the hell did happen? 1 minute everything was normal. Well, okay, normalish. We'd had our fights lately, that's for sure. But it started out so perfect. Remember when we bought our house? God, she was so excited she practically skipped from room to room. We can paint this one blue. She laughed, her eyes practically sparkling. That smile of hers. That's the thing that got me in the first place. Stress at work, bad mood, didn't matter. That smile could melt all of it away. Then we tried for a baby. That wasn't so easy. Doctors, appointments, waiting. Month after month, those damn negative tests. I could see the life drain out of her a little each time. Finally, it happened, and man, her smile then, it could have outshone the sun. But after, things got complicated. She'd get mad over nothing, snap at me if dinner wasn't perfect or I tracked a bit of dirt in from the garage. I tried to brush it off, thinking hormones or stress or something. But then the yelling started. Sometimes over nothing, sometimes I deserved it, I guess. Yesterday, she came up with this plan. I swear, the look in her eye, it didn't feel right. But I always tried to keep her happy, you know? We need money, she'd said, her voice hard. More money. I told her I couldn't just conjure up extra cash. She didn't like that. She told me to wait, that she had it figured out. Then she just left, didn't say where. I paced the house, feeling jumpy, a bad feeling in my gut that wouldn't go away. I texted her a few times, no answer. The news came on, that's when I knew something was way wrong. They were talking about a robbery, same area, about the same time she went out. When the cops showed up, well, that's when everything spiraled out of control. Now here I am, stuck in this room, and they're asking if I knew about it. I want to say no, of course not, but the truth is, part of me wonders if that crazy look in her eyes, that tension, what if she really was capable of this? My whole body was buzzing, like I downed 5 coffees instead of just one. The cops just kept asking questions. They seemed fixated on whether I knew about, well, whatever it was she'd done. I just wanted to go home, check if she was back, if everything would somehow go back to normal. Didn't they get that this wasn't me? This wasn't us. Look, I'm not the type to brag about stuff, but damn it, I tried. Those long nights where the baby wouldn't stop screaming and I was up at the crack of dawn for work? That was me, pulling extra shifts so we could afford that fancy daycare. Me again, my old buddies asking me out for a beer? Nah, couldn't do it. Had to be a good husband, a good dad. Had to put them first. And it was worth it, for a while. Seeing her face light up when I brought home that expensive easel for her paintings, or watching the kids go wild on the swing set I built. That was enough. That was the payoff. Remember that kitchen remodel? The one where she picked out all those fancy tiles and that stupid farmhouse sink? Hell yeah, I worked my ass off on that, even after my back ached and my hands were blistered. Worth it to hear her humming happily while she cooked up one of her fancy dinners. I might not get the whole art thing, but I got that making her happy made me happy. Then it changed. That spark. It started flickering. The smiles got fewer, the complaints got louder. Suddenly, everything I did was wrong. Like that one Saturday, I finally tried to squeeze in a round of golf. Just one lousy morning, and when I got back. Man, she laid into me like I'd never seen. Screaming that I never cared, that I was selfish. Okay. Maybe I snapped back, maybe we both said things we didn't mean. But hell, the next thing you know, she's coming up with this scheme of hers, saying it's our only way out. I finally got home after another day at the station. God, those people seemed extra unreasonable today. All I wanted was a hot meal, the kids tucked in bed, maybe half an hour of brainless TV before crashing. Just a normal night. But the dinner I'd left warming was still sitting on the counter, barely touched, and the kids were playing way past bedtime. I could hear her laughter coming from upstairs. She was on the phone, probably with one of her artsy friends. It wasn't even a special occasion, just another random night when I came home to a cold house and ignored food. That's when it started, that ache in my chest. I'd always been the kind of guy who brushed things off, who kept his head down and plowed through. But lately, it felt like something was off. Like the kitchen remodel, those fancy tiles she never even complimented, or that birthday present I'd spent way too much on, only to see it tucked away in a drawer a week later. Then there was our anniversary. That stung the most. I'd planned this surprise dinner reservation at that snobby place she always hinted about. But she came home late, some excuse about a client meeting running long, smelling like perfume that wasn't hers. She'd barely even apologized, just shrugged it off and asked what was for dinner. My buddy Dave pulled me aside last week, during our fishing trip. Hey man, I don't want to but I saw your wife the other day. At lunch, with some guy, he looked uncomfortable, like he expected me to go off the deep end. I just laughed, told him it was probably a client or something and changed the subject. But afterward, I couldn't shake the image. Her, laughing across a table from a dude I've never seen. Those late nights at work started happening more often, all with lame excuses. Unexpected project, or client dinner, stuff like that. Then those business trips popped up, quick overnighters to cities I couldn't place on a map. The doubt in the back of my mind grew bigger each day. I wanted to ask her straight out, but something held me back. Like I didn't want to face whatever the answer might be. The phone, man, that damn phone was glued to her hand. Texting at dinner, texting during the kids' bedtime stories, even texting in the freaking bathroom. I didn't like it, but when I mentioned it, she just rolled her eyes. It's work stuff, you know how demanding my clients can be. Whatever. Then came this Ashley person. Supposedly a new hire at her firm, some single mom struggling to make ends meet. My wife, bless her heart, felt the need to be her personal savior. I'm just mentoring her a bit, helping her out with the workload, she'd say. All well and good, except the helping out turned into late-night texts and weekend phone calls. Once, I even overheard her whispering on the porch, voice all soft and sympathetic. When I finally got the nerve to confront her about it, that's when things got weird. "You're being ridiculous," she hissed. Trying to control me, just like always. It was like a switch had flipped. She made me feel bad for even questioning her, like I should be grateful she took time away from her charity work to grace me with her presence. I couldn't sleep right anymore. The worry gnawed at me like rats in the walls. Found myself snapping at the kids for stupid stuff that usually didn't even get a rise out of me. That model airplane I'd been building with my son sat in the garage, half finished, the pieces scattered like my sanity. Everything was unraveling. The other morning, I saw her texting in the car, driving the kids to school. That's what set me off. I yelled, right there in front of the kids. I'd never done that, never lost my cool like that. Her face got all hard, that icy glare she only used when she wanted me to feel small. The kids started crying in the back seat, and I knew, right then and there, that something was seriously wrong. Seriously wrong. I couldn't take it anymore. The phone calls, the late nights, the lies piling up like a stack of dirty laundry. This wasn't us, this wasn't how things were supposed to be. So, I did something I never thought I would. Found one of those shady ads in the back of some free newspaper, you know the kind, discreet investigations, results guaranteed. Sounded desperate, but I figured, hell, I already was desperate. The guy the first met with was this sleazy type, office in some rundown part of town. He looked me up and down, probably sizing up how much he could squeeze out of me. Didn't matter, I just needed answers. I showed him a picture of my wife, told him I wanted her followed. Gave him what little I could scrape together, and waited. The photos came a week later, thick manila envelope shoved under my door when I got home from work. My hands were shaking so bad I could barely open the damn thing. There she was, clear as day, getting into a car in some supermarket parking lot. Not her car, and the guy driving. Well, I'd be damned if it wasn't Matt. My best friend Matt. I went home, I wanted to throw up, to scream, to smash something. But I just stood there in the kitchen, the pictures spread out on the counter, like I was some character in a bad movie. When she walked in that night, humming that same stupid tune she always did when she was feeling good, I couldn't hold it in anymore. I slammed the photos down in front of her. I don't even remember what I yelled, something about lies and betrayal and Matt. Her face did that thing, the way it twists when she's cornered. First, the denial, then the anger. How dare you? And, you're spying on me, like I was the bad guy here. But I wouldn't back down this time. Finally, it all came spilling out. Ashley, Matt, the affair that had been going on for months, maybe longer. My whole world started spinning. It took everything I had not to collapse right there on our perfectly tiled kitchen floor. Turns out, their families were tight too. Soccer games, barbecues. All of it while they snuck around behind our backs. I felt sick to my stomach, everything, all those years, all those talks about friendship and trust, just a big, fat punchline. The kids, I didn't know how to tell them, how to explain that their perfect world, the one I worked so hard to build, had exploded into a million shards. My little girl kept asking where mommy was, why she wasn't singing her bedtime song anymore. My boy, usually so full of energy, just got this quiet, sad look on his face. Every night they'd sneak into my room, and we'd all pile into my bed, clinging to each other like we were on a life raft in a storm. Then there were Matt and Ashley. Seeing their faces around town was like reopening a fresh wound. I'd always thought of Ashley as family. Our kids played together for years. Now, I couldn't even look at her without seeing them together, hearing her whispers on the phone, picturing their lies. And Matt, I didn't know if I wanted to punch him or just break down sobbing in front of him. I was completely lost, never been a talker, not about big feelings. So I did something I never thought I'd do. Called my brother. We haven't been close for years, always drifted apart for one stupid reason or another. But he answered my call, and his voice sounded different. Older, I guess. Less cocky. It all came spilling out. The affair, the photos, the kids. I must have sounded half crazed. But he just listened. For the first time in ages, I felt like someone was actually on my side. He told me to bring the kids and come stay at his place. A small apartment, nothing fancy, but it was enough. My in-laws, now that was a whole other mess. I guess I should have expected it, but they turned on me. Took their precious daughter's side, even after the proof, even with the kids crying and hurting. Her dad even threatened me. Said I'd never see my kids again if I took this any further. My world was collapsing, and the people who were supposed to protect her, defended her. Like the betrayal wasn't bad enough. It was my brother who finally talked some sense into me. Get yourself a lawyer, he said, and not some wishy-washy one. Get yourself a shark. I'd never been the confrontational type, always tried to make peace, keep things smooth. But sitting in my brother's cramped apartment, my kids sleeping on the worn-out sofa, something inside me snapped. We found this lawyer, a real sharp-dressed woman with eyes like steel. She didn't flinch when I told her the whole story, just took notes, that brow of hers furrowed. Then came the bombshell. Turns out a lawyer helps with more than just the divorce stuff. They can dig every bank statement, every old credit card bill, it was all laid out under those harsh fluorescent lights in her office. The numbers didn't lie, designer clothes, fancy hotels in cities I'd never heard of. All while I was counting pennies to make sure the kids had new shoes for school. Her so-called art career was an excuse, a cover for this double life she'd built. Then came the whispers, started like background noise you try to ignore, then got louder, impossible to escape. People, friends I thought I could count on, suddenly acting different. Some offered awkward condolences, others avoided me altogether. The worst were the parents at the kids' school, used to be all friendly chats at pickup. Now, those smiles seemed strained, a mix of pity and, I knew there was something off, behind their eyes. Every day felt like a battle. In court, with the lawyers arguing over every plate or picture frame, like our lives were just items on a list. In town, feeling the judgment of strangers. At home. Well, my brother's place wasn't a home, not really. Just a way station, a temporary shelter. But something shifted during those meetings with the lawyer, seeing the proof of it all in black and white. I wasn't just the sad, betrayed husband anymore. I was angry, damn angry, and that anger, it was fuel. I'd always been the nice guy, but enough was enough. It was time to fight back for what was rightfully mine, for the kids' sake, for my own sanity. My phone buzzed with an unknown number. I almost didn't answer, figuring it was some telemarketer or another lawyer looking for a scrap of this mess. But something made me hesitate. I swiped to answer. Hello? I said, voice hoarse from exhaustion. As this, is your name, husband's name? A woman's voice, timid and familiar, but I couldn't place it. Yeah, who's this? That's when it hit me. Ashley? I said, the name tasting like bitter acid in my mouth. Turns out, life likes a sick joke. After everything, she was the one who reached out. Said she saw my address listed in the court filings, wanted to talk. Against my better judgment, I agreed. Figured a bit more pain at this point wouldn't kill me. We met at a dingy little coffee shop on the edge of town. She looked different, not the glamorous, put-together Ashley I remembered. This version was pale, eyes red-rimmed, a slump in her shoulders that mirrored my own. Turns out, Matt wasn't the prize she expected either. We talked, awkwardly at first, then the words poured out like we were both desperate to make sense of it all. The lies, the years of deception. She told me things about my wife, things about Matt, that made me want to be sick. And then she apologized, not for what she'd done, but for being part of hurting me, of hurting the kids. Even in mess of her own making, there was a flicker of decency in her. The kids, they're the hardest part. My little boy keeps drawing pictures of our family, the four of us together and smiling. My daughter keeps asking for mommy to read her favorite story, the one about the princess. I'd choke out some excuse, make up promises I can't keep, and hope they're still young enough to believe me. How do you explain the unexplainable to innocent eyes? Last night, after the kids finally slept, I did something I swore I'd never do. I went into the garage and pulled a bottle out from the back of the tool cupboard. I never was a big drinker, a beer after mowing the lawn kind of guy, but lately, I just wanted to feel numb. I sat there on the floor, staring at the framed wedding photo propped up against a half-built workbench. All those promises, that beaming smile, such a damn lie. The rage bubbled up inside me, hot and uncontrollable. I let out a scream, a primal sound I didn't know I was capable of, and hurled the picture against the wall. The shattering glass was like ice water to the face. I collapsed on the floor right there, and I cried. Cried like I haven't since I was a little kid, sobbed until I had nothing left, until all that remained was a cold emptiness. Somewhere, in the back of my mind, was the thought I should clean it up, that the kids shouldn't see. But all I felt in that moment was bone-deep exhaustion and a question, was I ever good enough anyway? Character assassination, that's what my lawyer called it. Each week in court, it was a new lie. I was abusive, neglectful, mentally unstable. The kind of accusations that make a good man doubt himself for just a second. Then I'd look at my kids, their faces pale and drawn, and the rage would blaze white hot in me again. She'd turned them into pawns in this vicious game. Coached them, I think. Their once bright eyes that used to light up when they saw me were now weary, filled with questions I couldn't answer, accusations I couldn't fathom. Every visit had a new sting, a new accusation, tearing me apart piece by piece. Funny thing happened though. My sister, who'd always been quiet, barely a voice in our family, changed right before my eyes. She wouldn't stand for it. Started dropping by every morning to help with the kids, her no-nonsense voice cutting through the chaos. Eat your breakfast, she'd tell them, not asking, but not mean either. At night, she'd put on her glasses and go to war with my lawyer, scouring the paperwork with a look that could make a grown man squirm. The trial, it was hell. Having to recount the worst moments of my life for a room full of strangers. Seeing her sitting there, not even looking ashamed, and that loser mad shifting in his seat like a cornered rat. The dirt the lawyers dug up, the proof that her fancy trips were all paid for by my sweat and sacrifice. Every word was like a punch to the gut, but somewhere in the back of my mind, it solidified something. I wasn't gonna go under without a fight, not for my kids, not for myself. We didn't get everything we wanted. Judge seemed to think splitting things down the middle was fair. Money from the house sale would be tied up forever, and worse, she'd still get visitation. But damn it, I got primary custody. Restrictions put on Matt and her spending spree? The judge didn't take kindly to that, not at all. Leaving the courthouse, I didn't feel victorious, but something close to it. The kids were little less wary, my sister actually hugged me, and the sky above didn't seem so oppressive anymore. Now it's just us. Our perfect house is full of half-finished projects and more dust bunnies than you'd believe. But washing a load of dishes, it's different somehow. It's my mess to clean. My kids to feed. This bottle's not over. Far from it. But there's a flicker inside me, a stubborn refusal to lose. This is a post that I never thought I'd write, and I'm sure many people say the same. But I also never thought I'd make such a foolish mistake. I'm really scared of how people will react to what I'm about to say. I've been married since February 2016 to an amazing man. He's helped me cope with the pain from a soul assault and emotional abuse. My husband and I, both in our late 20s, deal with depression. Our marriage isn't perfect and we've faced some tough times, especially because of our mental health struggles. I've taken him for granted and I realize now that I needed to work on our marriage and myself long before what happened in the past month. The person I had an affair with was a school friend, someone I've known since I was 11 years old. He was a year ahead of me in school and we were part of the same group of friends. We never dated and after I changed schools after high school, we lost touch. About a year or so later, he reappeared in my life, which seemed to be a recurring pattern. We chatted and sometimes went for drives, but then he went off to university and disappeared again. We remained friends on social media throughout all this time. Then, during my third year of university, I was diagnosed with anxiety and prescribed medication. I ended up reaching out to him because I always felt like I was to blame for his occasional disappearances. During my third year, he became the person I would call in the early hours of the morning when I was struggling. We got close and he offered to come and visit me, which I eagerly accepted because I was single and he claimed to be as well. He came to stay with me, and we ended up sharing the same bed. He saw me undressed and also engaged in acts of soul nature, except I was incredibly uncomfortable and apart from kissing I kept saying no, but I was young and very stupid back then, and he got me with the very emotional story of his ex-girlfriend going through pregnancy removal. We never had sex as I stood my ground, and then the next day he left telling me he was going away on a work trip for 7 weeks and wouldn't be able to contact me, and naive me bought it. He took around 3 months to get back in contact and I lost it, flipped out via text and told him to never contact me again. I was a 22-year-old university student at the time, and looking back, I can admit that I was incredibly naive. I had very little self-respect and I didn't have many expectations for myself or others. Since then, I've grown and matured a lot, but back then, naive is the best way to describe me. Perhaps I was unconsciously willing to overlook certain things, but I genuinely had no idea that this guy had a girlfriend at the time. In fact, he explicitly told me that he was single. I should add that this was in 2014. I moved on and met my husband and everything was going well. I had no contact with the guy from my past and started realizing the negative experiences he had put me through. Then, I decided to tell my husband about this guy and others I had been involved with. My husband, understanding my struggles with depression, asked me to block these guys and ensure they couldn't contact me. Over the years, we've been working on resolving my issues related to relationships and intimacy. I'm even on the waiting list for intensive counseling to focus on these areas. All seemed to be going fine until the end of September when my grandmother passed away. For some reason, I posted about it on Twitter and my affair partner reached out to me through private messages, expressing his condolences since he had lost his grandmother the previous year. Instead of being sensible and discussing this with my husband right away, I responded and things quickly spiraled out of control. We exchanged messages in which he told me I was the most amazing person he had ever met, how beautiful I was, and that he had always loved me. I made another significant mistake by apologizing for pushing him away, even though I hadn't, and expressing regret for not being better. I don't remember the exact words, but I've discussed most of it with my husband when he found out. My next big mistake was sending inappropriate photos to AP. He kept assuring me that he was there for me and that I could talk to him about anything. He seemed so glad that I was back in his life. During this time, things were getting worse with my husband. We were arguing more and I was becoming increasingly protective of my phone. I should mention that, as a way to help me with my mental health, my husband keeps an eye on my daily phone usage. I've had days where I would spend hours on my phone, neglecting my well-being and our marriage. My affair partner and I started meeting up and having physical affair during this period. I knew my husband often checked my phone, so I went out of my way to delete incriminating conversations and photos. About a few months later, my husband came to say goodnight and picked up my phone. He instantly asked, "Who's this?" That's when everything came crashing down and I got caught. I got caught because I was enjoying the attention and was happy to have this person back in my life, so I didn't go to my husband and tell him. I told him that our relationship was just emotional and the text conversation didn't reveal anything physical, so he wasn't aware to what the extent of the physical relationship, and I omitted the detail about having physical affair as I didn't want to hurt him. He told me it would have been much less hurtful if I had come to him at any point, and I truly wish I had. Honestly, I do. Initially, I got defensive and started blaming him, but since then, I have fully accepted all responsibility. I've told him as much as I can remember. However, I did leave out some details, such as the inappropriate photos I sent and how many times we were intimate. I did this to protect him from getting hurt. I want to be clear that I'm not trying to justify or make excuses for my actions. My husband didn't deserve what I did, and I still can't believe I may have jeopardized my marriage. He's really upset and I'm not sure if he's going to leave me. As soon as my husband found out, I took immediate action. I deleted all access to AP, cutting all ties, and removed the social media accounts he used to contact me. My husband called AP right away and AP quickly shifted blame onto me, saying it was all my fault. While I am definitely at fault, AP didn't take responsibility for his part even though his messages showed otherwise. Initially, he made my husband believe it was solely my fault. I understand that my actions have consequences and I have indeed harmed my marriage. I agree that this way of thinking needs to change, but I'm uncertain about how to stop it. I don't want to solely blame him because he didn't force me to respond and he didn't make me send those photos. Those were decisions I made on my own and I deeply regret them. I think I'm just really angry with him. I recently found out that back then when I was 22 and, in the university, he lied about being in a relationship, so I believe he took advantage of me. It was a time when I was completely single and in a very vulnerable state, and I thought he was a friend I could trust. I don't think I'm any different from him now, but this happened 4 years ago, before I even knew my husband, and he told me he was single. Knowing now that was all a lie doesn't surprise me at all. I was naive, and it took me years to realize that he had actually manipulated me. I agree that I accepted stuff that people with higher respect and confidence wouldn't accept. Although, part of my soul abuse was a very serious case of having my drink spiked, which is a 17 to 18-year-old I didn't know to look out for. So yes, I am angry at myself, angry that I let myself be used and put into dangerous situations that still hurt me and impact my marriage. As for the second time I slept with him, I was married to my husband. Absolutely, I am the sole party responsible, and you're right, nowhere and the vows didn't say that, and it makes me feel sick that I caved at that and that I gave him the opportunity. I should have mentioned earlier that my affair partner has a girlfriend whom he lives with. My affair partner really went to great lengths to hide everything. He blocked my husband on social media and took it a step further by taking his girlfriend's phone to block both my husband and me. The poor girl had absolutely no idea about any of this, and she might still not know if my husband hadn't taken action. My husband contacted my affair partner and told him that he knew who his partner was and that he had until the next day to tell her about it because she deserved to know. My affair partner tried to handle it on his own terms, but my husband essentially forced him to break the news to his partner, which was heartbreaking. She thanked my husband for making my affair partner tell her, and he also admitted that he had stolen her phone. This is when I learned something that has made me even angrier. My affair partner had been in a 6-year relationship with this girl the entire time. Yes, when he came to see me, he wasn't single. I can't believe that this guy messed me around all these years. Is it okay for me to feel angry and upset about this? I'm deeply in love with my husband, and I will forever be sorry for what I've done. Right now, it feels like our marriage is on shaky ground because he feels betrayed by my actions. However, we are still living together in the same house, and I hold on to hope that we can work through this. I've committed to improving myself and working on my mental health. Every day is a struggle, as there are moments when he's loving and affectionate, but then he breaks down. We've thought about trying marriage counseling, but he's unsure if it can help us rebuild the trust he had for me. I feel devastated by what I've done to him, and I'm terrified that he might realize he can't move past this. I also feel a strong sense of self-hatred, and I constantly blame myself for what I've done. There shouldn't have been a reason for me to be angry at him, but I find myself snapping at him because he's afraid I might revert to my past behavior. The other day, I got upset with him because he mentioned that he believed there was more to the story than I was telling him. I realize that I tend to get snappy and defensive, and it's not just a reaction to being called out. It's something I've struggled with for a long time. Sometimes, yes, I still feel sorry for myself. I am genuinely remorseful, and I am deeply sorry for what I did to my husband. I understand that it will take time to earn back his trust, so I've given him my phone and password. He wants me to share information that I've deleted, but there's nothing to recover because it has already been deleted. Pushing for it wouldn't help resolve anything. My husband believes that my emotional outbursts can be a bit childish, but it's mainly because I'm incredibly frustrated with the slow progress we're making. We haven't had a child together, so in a way, if our relationship doesn't work out, at least no child gets hurt. I really dislike being questioned, and nobody wants to be seen as the one causing harm. Communication has never been my strong suit, and I acknowledge that my betrayed husband hasn't been very patient with me so far. Often, I find myself formulating a response instead of genuinely listening to what he's trying to convey. I've said many hurtful things to him that I don't even remember saying. I've shouted a lot and refused to stop even when he told me he was triggered by our conversations. I've also wrongly blamed him for the affair, arguing that it could have been worse, and I've even accused him of never caring about me. I've said similar things in the past during my moments of depression, and it always takes time to repair the damage. But now, we're dealing with the added complication of my affair, which has eroded my husband's trust in me. He feels that my words and actions last night and most of today have undone some of the progress I had made in rebuilding our relationship. I'm truly disappointed in myself for letting my anger and frustration get the best of me, especially when my husband was having a tough day. As the one who had the affair, I know it's my responsibility to be the healer, not the one causing conflicts at 3 a.m. If anyone reading this has any advice on how I can work on myself to become a better person and partner, I would greatly appreciate it. I'm fully aware that my husband doesn't deserve this pain and he's in a very fragile state right now due to my actions. Did anyone else have a difficult time in the first few weeks after D-Day, which was about 2 weeks ago? Update: one evening, there was a knock on our door and a process server handed me divorce papers. This came as a shock because we were considering reconciling. A few hours later, he returned home and I confronted him for not personally giving me the papers. He revealed that he had recovered all the deleted messages from my phone and had seen everything. I tried explaining that I hadn't tried to hide anything. I deleted the messages to protect his mental well-being. He also told me that he didn't need to police me anymore and that he had spoken to his therapist, who allegedly said I was a burden on him. I doubted whether his therapist had really said that, and I thought he was being a coward by not taking responsibility for his actions. He claimed he could no longer trust me, even though that wasn't what he had been saying a few nights ago. I reminded him that we had agreed to work on our marriage, but he denied it and went ahead to file for divorce. He said he had barely slept more than 3 hours a night for the past 2 weeks since he found out about the affair and it was affecting his job. I told him that if he had agreed to marriage counseling, he might not be facing these issues now. I understand that the affair was my fault, but I feel like he didn't make an effort to work on our marriage. I'm really devastated right now because I don't know how I can go on without him. He has supported me with my mental health, sometimes at his own expense, and I truly feel abandoned. I'm hoping he might change his mind about the divorce. In the meantime, I'm looking deep within myself to understand the reasons behind my choices and to work on myself so I won't seek external attention from someone else to validate my self-worth, which ultimately cost me my marriage. It's a challenging and lengthy journey, but it's one I must undertake if I ever hope to. Thank you for stopping by the channel. Here are a couple of Reddit cheating stories for your listening pleasure. This is long, but I've been struggling on and off for a month, and anyone who can offer some feedback, my heart goes to you. My wife and I are effectively high school sweethearts from different schools together since 16 together, 20 years married for 12, one daughter trying for our second child. Like a lot of infidelity stories, we were not at our highest emotional peak. When it happened, we spent much of 2021 trying for our second child. The pressures and disappointments of it not happening were hard on both of us, knowing how especially hard it had been on her. I constantly tried to be the "it's okay. Next month, we just try again" person with a brave, optimistic face, which was apparently interpreted as "I didn't care." Sex became so regimented around an ovulation schedule. It sucked a lot of fun out of it. She wanted more spice and felt like her needs weren't getting met in that way. But, on the flip side, I had historically hit a lot of brick walls and no's around creativity. So, I too felt like my own needs were underserved. There were some communication roadblocks around all of it. There were also the all too typical challenges of being new parents with limited childcare outside of when we are both at work, not a lot of us time, which leads to a rut feeling. And the feeling of just being at the job and parent. I should note that one thing that makes all of this so much harder is that I am not the jealous or possessive type. And I mean, at all. In 20 years, I felt like trust and faithfulness was a pillar of our relationship. I was also well aware of feeling like we were in a pressure rut, and I was proactively taking big steps to fix that. I was taking steps as major as completely changing my role at work. So my hours meant I would be home almost nightly. I had to work evenings about 3 times a week, which was getting hard on all of us. After relying on family for most of 3 years, I was seeking a local sitter to make sure we could start to have a regular day night going forward. And I had some spice-up ideas and gifts lined up for that holiday in February. I know there are ups and downs in long-term relationships and that the situation we were in was challenging, but always worth working through. During the fall, she befriended a new male coworker. Like I said, I'm not any jerk jealous and thought nothing of it. A lot of early communication was around sharing he and his wife's own fertility issues with child number 2. As time passed, it seemed like he was mentioned more and more in work stories, even though they definitely don't work directly with one another. But again, not the jealous type. A few months ago, we had another crushing month of not getting pregnant. She was particularly emotional this time around and texted me from work saying she had a coworker, made it sound like a girlfriend, asking to take her out for a drink in response to her hard day and asking, would I be fine if she did that while I had our daughter? Of course, go have fun, get your mind off things, chat with a friend. Hell, I've been trying to convince you to do things like this every once in a while for a long time, but you constantly cite mom guilt. Please go. I am an extremely hands-on dad with caretaking the kiddo, and I have the house held down. Turns out the friend was said coworker. Now I can't stress this enough. In 20 years, I don't think I have ever had anything that qualifies as a huge, jealous reaction. Before she claimed it was platonic, but I was pissed. In retrospect, her failure to mention who the coworker was felt like an intentional omission. She and I rarely had child coverage to have a date night. But in this case, I was used as the childcare to go out for drinks one-on-one with another guy. And in response to her extremely emotional state, I explained that this was a big emotional boundary issue in my eyes. For contrast, I explained that if I had a married female coworker who was feeling emotionally fragile, I would never take her out for drinks one-on-one without knowing her husband personally, or more importantly, knowing it was something he was aware of and comfortable with. She made me sound like I was crazy for thinking it was anything more than just drinks with a friend, but it just didn't pass the straight face test for me. But I quickly gathered myself, talked more rationally about how I felt. She acknowledged that she wasn't thinking about it from my point of view, and we moved on. Fast forward, just under 2 months. It's 6 a.m. and our daughter is always up early. We often alternate getting up with her so the other can get a little bit more sleep. I take her downstairs and we use my wife's work iPad to run the PBS Kids app. I am not a snoop, but as I go to get it set up, I'm taken aback by the iPad home screen being littered with notifications of private chat messages with this employee, talking about coming over to our house at 7 p.m. the previous night, how they have a fun, uncomplicated arrangement that will have to be put on hold in a few weeks. My schedule was changing for the reasons I said before, and so forth. I was in a total state of shock when I confronted her. She got a look of dread and shame in the little time we had to communicate quietly as to not alert our daughter. I found out that he had been lying to his own family about going to work for his second job, coming over once a week on nights. I worked late for the last 5 weeks straight with the intention to go 2 more rounds until of course my schedule wasn't as convenient for their arrangement. She tried to plead that she never meant to hurt me or our relationship. And she was 100% committed to us. I have never been more frazzled and feeling like I was spiraling in my life. I send a lot of angry texts, as you can imagine. My coworkers knew I wasn't okay. I played it off like I got bad news on the family health front and had to leave. There was no way I could focus. I drove home and tried to convince myself things weren't as bad as it seemed. I went to reread the messages to see if I reacted too strongly and wouldn't. The two had a new chat going. It was clear that he was aware I found out, but the conversation didn't seem to, oh no. In fact, it was a bizarre combination of chatty, Kathy friendly talk about what they made for food the night before and her inviting him down to her room at lunch to go through her phone, listing her lock screen password and read her private messages. The angry texts, I don't know about any of you, but if you cheated, crap hit the fan and the wound was extremely fresh. Your claim is that you're committed to the relationship. There's something about immediately going to the affair partner and saying, hey, come have lunch with me, and go through my phone. Doesn't sit right on the, where's your loyalty front? All the hallmarks of emotional and physical betrayal were there, of course, but there were so many reasons that this was extra bad circumstantially. 1. It was done while we were trying to get pregnant with child. Number 2, after bonding with this person over stories about fertility struggles. That alone is messed up too. There is nothing she cited about where her head was at the time that couldn't also be said about me, but I was working on solutions and an extramarital affair isn't even on the radar. 3, while we struggled to get us time with the toddler at home, I was effectively used as childcare. So she could have that sort of time out with someone else, which was also the night that talk of each of them wanting more in the bedroom heated up for as far as wanting more goals. I already mentioned my plans for helping break out of the rut, but she had put up so many brick walls with me. It was hard to even know what direction to go and forget crazy ideas to spice things up. We're talking things most couples would consider pretty basic. She wouldn't please me orally because it gave her lockjaw, that she could never do a certain position sexually because it hurt, and that her OBGYN has acknowledged that had something to do with her pelvis, that she was long past wearing anything that wasn't comfortable underneath. That she's been extremely self-conscious about her breasts since nursing and always wanted to keep them covered since, and you know what, even if there were things I wanted, I would never push her in any way. She wasn't comfortable, but come to find out everything she ever took off the table for me was apparently on the table for him during the affair, even busted out lingerie. She wore on our wedding night that she never wore for me again. In 12 years, we've been together since we were 16 frigging years old. She is the only person I've ever been with while it's natural for anyone to have passing curiosities in a lifetime. It creates this imbalance when one person acts on them and only one is left faithful for basically life, whether it was stopping the affair to begin with, or taking extremely active steps to improve communication and things with us. None of these were conclusions that happened on their own. This wasn't a, what have I done? This was a mistake and I need to come clean moment. This was over time, methodical and had planned for more, but I got caught. Attempts at improving anything with us in ways she never did before all just feel like concessions. Now, the fallout is a long separate story in itself. I spent 2 weeks sleeping on separate floors. Most nights we had big emotional powwows, sometimes in ways that could have been considered productive, but I have a hard time letting the most hurtful thing someone has done to me be viewed as any sort of positive turning point. I have been trying to give reconciliation a shot, but my feelings about it and what it means for our relationship are all over the map. Before I say too much about it, I could just really use some feedback to anyone who got through all of that. Thanks for listening. Hello, everyone. My marriage story is different than the rest of the stories posted here. It will be a long one as well. Please have a look at it. I am not from the US, but I have been working here in the US since I was 23. And now I am 30 and going to be 31 soon. I am from a developing country and I did both my bachelor's and master's in computer science engineering from an Ivy League school here in the US. So basically, I have been in the US since I was 16. My father is a government employee and my mother is a homemaker. I have an elder sister who is a doctor and she is married and mother of 2 children. Both me and my sister were brilliant academically. She wanted to be a doctor and she is now. I wanted to be an engineer and wanted to pursue my bachelor's in the US. I am currently working in a world-renowned company that we all know. We use the company products every day in all walks of our life. I have an arranged marriage. When I got married, I was 27 and my wife was 21. After completion of my master's and getting the job in my dream company, I moved to a new city. I stayed with 2 of my friends in a shared accommodation for 3 years. Then one of my friends got married. And so we vacated that place and took our own place to rent. I took a 3-bedroom, 4-bath apartment in a posh area in the city, which is 15 minutes away from my office. I met an American man in the new apartment complex and he was my neighbor. He is a car salesman for a high-end car company distributor and was sharing the apartment with 2 guys. He helped me a lot. I mean a lot. I considered him as a close friend. He voluntarily would come to me once a week and will ask me if I need help. I would invite him to both lunch and dinner at my place. Almost every weekend, he would come to my place to watch sports. And we will talk about various topics. Whenever I will go home, my mother will send a lot of gifts for him, and he is always very happy to receive them as well. I never asked him about his personal life neither. He also never asked me anything. Anyway, I got married and of course he was invited. And I booked tickets for him and paid for the visa. He was not able to go because of some work-related thing. My wife came with me after her visa processing. I was very happy. My wife is very beautiful. I am a tall guy, 6 feet 3 inches, and my wife is 5 feet 8 inches. She came from a well-established family and a lovely person. She has a bachelor's degree in history. 7 months back, I was at home working and I heard my wife crying. I walked up to her and asked what happened. She was in the living room, on the couch watching TV. I thought something on TV she saw made her cry. Upon asking, she started bawling and I was clueless. And I was still thinking it's because of the TV, but I was unable to find anything emotional on the TV. She started saying how sorry she was and how she ruined everything. I was still trying to understand what was happening and told her, "Don't worry. We can always fix whatever was ruined. No need to cry. And she looks ugly while crying and she should always smile." The next 6 to 8 hours were hell for me. She told me how 2 years back, for a month, I worked 20 hours every day on a very important project. My friend and my wife went on a sex rampage. Basically, she told me I would leave for the office at 3:45 in the morning, and my friend would come over at 4 and they would do their thing. And he would leave right before I got back, right around midnight. It went on for exactly 1 month and everything stopped after that month. Also, my friend left the apartment complex the next month as well. He rarely speaks to me or responds to my text messages anymore. I will write some more, but later. Thanks for reading. Don't know what I am asking or interested to know. This story was shared to us by a listener. I want to thank him for sharing his story. My situation is unique because I found out about my wife cheating. After she passed away, my wife grew up with both parents. They went to church every Sunday. Since she was born, we've been married for 13 years and dating. Since we were 18 years old, we have 3 kids and a house. The kids were 8, 11, and 13. When she passed away in 2020, we made around the same amount for years. She made between $3,600 to $4,000 a month as an RN. I made between $3,000 to $5,000 a month as a wholesale supplier. I saw several signs and blatantly ignored them. Here are some of the signs I ignored. Her phone was on the floor. I went to pick it up and put it on the charger. She jumped out of her sleep and asked me what I'm doing with her phone. I thought to myself, the only reason she would react in such a way, if she's cheating. Another sign, we were talking in the front room, she showed me a video clip of a guy in New York who does sexual massages. I grabbed the phone from her so I can view it myself. She started going crazy and fighting me over it. I eventually gave it back to her, but the biggest sign I ignored, she said she was going to a club one night. She didn't come home until 4:30 in the morning. We had a big argument about coming home. So late, the only reason I didn't jump to conclusions, she was cheating. In the first year of our marriage, I stayed out until 5 in the morning with my friend. We went to the club, then chilled outside talking. I wasn't with the girl, nor was I cheating. My phone ends up dying. So, she couldn't get in contact with me. When I finally came home, she didn't accuse me of cheating and said she was concerned. She called the cops to report me missing, but she had to wait 24 hours. The last sign before she passed away, maybe 4 to 6 days prior, I asked her if I could use her phone to post clothes on Facebook for advertising. She was hesitant, then started going over her phone. I said to myself, that's something I would do if I were cheating. I reassured her, I wouldn't go through her phone because I didn't want to know if she was cheating. Besides, I trust her. She gave me her phone and I went into the room. After 10 minutes of using her phone and posting on Instagram and Facebook, I decided to go in her direct message on Instagram. I went to a conversation she had with her best friend. I said to myself, if she's cheating, her best friend would know. I read a little bit of the conversation. It wasn't anything there. I went to the text messages and noticed text messages by a trainer. I saw a little bit of the conversation, then closed out because I felt bad about going through her phone. After I told her I wouldn't, that's when she walked to the room to see if I was using her phone. I told her I was almost done, but I found it odd again. I said to myself, she's showing signs of a cheater. We had a conversation months prior to her passing about cheating. I asked her if I cheated on her, what would she do? Her reply, I don't know, because I have never dealt with you cheating before. I found it odd because we started dating at 18. We've always agreed the relationship is over. If one of us cheats, I told her, I'd rather you divorce me because I don't want to know. I don't know how I would react. I read stories from men murdering their family or abusing their spouse and going to jail. I have listened to songs about a guy committing suicide after discovering his wife cheating. Another song about a guy dying in a car crash after going through his girl's phone. I didn't want to be in that predicament. So, I convinced myself not wanting to know is the best option. All the signs I ignored were within the last year of her passing. She passed away in September of 2020. When I got home to tell the kids, we started crying and the kids were screaming. It's the most gut-wrenching experience in my life. It still haunts me till this day. When I think about it, I got her phone from my youngest son and asked if they knew the password. The youngest one told me the code. I told myself I would keep my word by not going through her phone, even in death. I planned on deleting the text messages when I got time to do it. I announced her passing on Facebook. I planned to keep her memory alive by posting pictures every day. I decided to bury her next to my mother, where we agreed to be buried after my mother passing. About 5 days after she passed, a guy sends her a video message from the Caribbean islands where she went on vacation. I decided to respond to him as her to find out if anything went on between them. By the conversation, they sent video messages back and forth. How are you doing conversations? I decided to call her friend and ask her about it because they went on vacation together. My wife's girlfriend, Nancy, played it off and said they took his information because they wanted a travel guide. The next time they went, she told me, you know, your wife loved you. The day after the funeral, I wanted to post a video of her instead of a picture. I went through the trash area of her phone. As I'm scrolling, I noticed a naked picture of a man. I thought to myself, if you go down the rabbit hole, it's no turning back, but I couldn't turn a blind eye now. That's when I decided to go through her phone. When I went to her Facebook Messenger, I didn't see anything. Just conversations with her friends. I went through her text messages. It was a treasure trove of information. I read the whole conversation with the personal trainer. As I'm going back in the conversation, I found sexting, nudes and texts saying, I can't talk right now because he's next to me. As I'm reading everything, I became furious and started having a nervous breakdown. I'm thinking to myself, I wish she was here so I could confront her. I felt like she got away without talking to me. Now I'm brainstorming about everything. I see the personal trainer's address. I decided to Google it because it seemed familiar, and it was. I remember going to his apartment to pick up her gym clothes months prior to their sexual encounter. I felt disrespected and violated. I decided to call her best friends because I wanted answers. I had to piece the story together as much as possible. I knew they wouldn't give me any information. So, I had to trick them by threatening to expose their infidelity on social media. I called her best friend, Nancy, again, because she dealt with her every day. She didn't want to tell me anything, but she felt compelled since she didn't want my wife's information exposed. She told me after the club one night, my wife went to a hotel and almost had sex with a guy, but he couldn't get aroused. I guess she thought that wouldn't piss me off. The friend didn't know about the guy I found in her phone. The guy she told me about was different. The friend explained when I went to the club with my wife, they would see each other and wouldn't say anything. Now I'm steaming in my head because I'm in the same club with the guy sleeping with my wife. I asked Nancy why she didn't divorce me. If she was going to cheat, she said, because she felt like you were a good father. After I heard that I felt used and manipulated for her to stay with me because she didn't want to co-parent and handle financial obligations by herself was an insult. Especially when she's making $8,000 a month as an APRN. She got her master's in November 2019 and started working a new job in January 2020, 9 months before she passed away. I decided to call her friends to find out what went on behind my back. I barely got any information after threatening to expose her. One person told me she used to flirt with a coworker. That's it. As the days went on, after discovering everything, I read the text messages with all our friends. Nancy told my wife about her cousin being interested in her. My wife told her to give him her number. Now I'm furious as hell. I decided to call her again to speak about the situation. I'm screaming and yelling obscenities. She's gasping and sighing on the phone. I told Nancy she will never see the kids again. Now she's hurt and making excuses for her involvement by saying she got nothing to do with it. I told her, you're the one who told my wife your cousin was interested and exchanged numbers. A few days later, I decided to get in contact with Nancy's boyfriend and tell him about Nancy going to hotels with other men. All the information in my wife's phone, I gave him one of the guy's phone numbers so he could get in contact with him. I told him not to react right away, just get access to her phone and go through it because she switched the names around. He calls me back 2 weeks later and tells me about the aftermath. He said he waited 10 days to confront her. He went through a Facebook Messenger since he had access to it, but he didn't see much, only little signs. When he went to confront her at the hiking trail, he grabbed the phone from her and she panicked. Then said, "She's going to call the cops." So, he decided to break the phone since he's the one paying for it. As I'm going through my wife's phone some more, I see conversations with multiple men. I see one conversation that alarmed me with her friend, Amy. It implied the guy she almost had sex with was interested in a threesome, which seemed to intrigue my wife. I remember a conversation we had around the time. My wife asked me if I would be interested in a threesome. I told her no, because it goes against my religious beliefs. Even though I would be interested, I think she was using me as a moral gauge. I saw Cash App payments from the guy to her after she went out to eat with him. Plus, I remember the day because she said she would bring some food home from the restaurant, but she changed her mind because the food wasn't good. I saw conversations with other friends saying I was jealous of her. I never specified in detail why I'm jealous of her. I'm left to assume it's over me trying to prevent her from doing something that costs her her life. She's telling associates I'm mean and nasty to her because countless arguments over finances and cleaning. She wouldn't clean up the house and spent most of her money on vacations, shopping and partying. While my money was tied up paying bills, I'm not going to lie. I was verbally abusive to her, but I felt justified in my actions because I wanted more out of life than living check to check and living in a nasty house. It was countless insults behind my back by her, to my sisters and boss. After she died and I had to take care of all the bills, I found out she was 2 months behind on the car insurance. The washer and dryer were not paid off after I gave her half of the money to take care of it. A month later, I told her the washing machine wasn't working. Her reply, "It was stopped working after we paid it off." She took 15 days to pay the mortgage certain amounts after I gave her half the money to pay it before the grace period. To make matters worse, I found out she was smoking marijuana. That startled me because since teenagers, we agreed to never smoke marijuana. If I knew she was smoking, I would have told her to stop or I'll leave. I decided to tell 2 of my kids about their mother's infidelity and the not-so-kind words she expresses about her kids to Nancy's cousin. The oldest one got extremely mad and told me to remove all her pictures from the wall. The 11-year-old seemed indifferent about it. His main concern was beating up the guys she slept with. I had to explain to him why it's inappropriate when she slept with them willingly. I never told the youngest one what his mother did. I felt like he wouldn't understand. Sometimes he feels left out because his other brothers know, plus he was confused with the removal of her pictures. He said, "It felt like I didn't love his mother." Now I'm wrestling with the idea of moving her casket. I don't want her next to my mother. I don't want to be buried next to her. I decided to research if she could be transferred to her father's cemetery and the cost. When I decided to tell her brother about my decision, he objected to it, asking why I never had a full conversation with him or the mother over their daughter's infidelity. It felt awkward telling them since their perception of her was a righteous woman. I felt like it would be a tough pill to swallow. Her mother heard about her daughter cheating indirectly. Her niece told her I found information on her phone. I told her brother about her indiscretions in a roundabout way, but the phone hung up without me knowing. I was talking on the phone to nobody for 10 to 15 minutes. I took it as a sign. He wasn't meant to know the details. When I told my sisters about moving her, they told me not to make any rash decisions and give it a year. My wife's family doesn't want her casket moved. I decided to leave her next to my mother, but I'm not getting her a headstone, which some of the family members are upset about. I won't allow anybody else to get her one. If they decide to do it without my consent, I'll have it removed. I haven't been able to visit my mother since September the 26th, 2020. I used to visit her several times within a week. I stopped going after my wife was buried next to her. I feel like if I go see my mother, I'll be paying my respects to her as well. 3 weeks after my wife died, I met a girl and went out on a date with her and we hit it off. She ends up getting pregnant 2 months later, but the timing was horrible. Especially dealing with my kids and public perception. 2 months later, after my girlfriend announced her pregnancy, Nancy decided to make a long post on Facebook using a fake page, disparaging me by saying my wife took care of the finances and kids. She stated I was in the house with the kids, but I didn't take care of them. Also, she said I wasn't capable of putting half the money down on a house. Plus hinted at me cheating on my wife because it's no way my new girlfriend popped up pregnant 2 months after my wife died. One of my sisters felt the same way and asked questions in a roundabout way to debunk their theory. My daughter was born in July 2021. So, my girlfriend had to get pregnant in October or November. She lived in California before coming back to Connecticut to help her mother. She came back in June 2020, 2 months before my wife passed away. Besides, my wife and girlfriend are friends with my female boss I work for at a car wash. So, it's no way possible for me to get away with cheating. I would be paranoid to pull it off. Plus the most important part, I don't want to go to my kids and tell them the reason daddy had to leave the house because I cheated. My girlfriend planned to go back to California with her mother in a few months. She only came back to help her mother sell the condo. After getting pregnant, she stayed with me to give birth to my daughter. I'm not a big believer in karma, but somehow I feel like the string of events was timed. My wife became an RN in 2007 and started making $3,600 a month. She went back to school in 2014 to get her master's. She received her master's in late 2019. She started her new job as an APRN in January of 2020, making $8,000 a month. For the 13 years we were married, I didn't know about her life insurance policy. I knew she had one, but I didn't know the details. After she passed, I looked into everything. Her job from 2014 to 2019, she had an insurance policy for both of us for $40,000 and less for the kids. When she started her new job in 2020, she only had life insurance policy on herself for 6 figures. It shocked me. She didn't have one for the kids and took the minimum policy through her job. I'm assuming she wanted to keep as much money for herself in her paycheck. I remember having an argument with her about not having life insurance to bury me. I told her I'm not dying anytime soon. And if I do, just wrap me up and bury me without a casket. So it's not costly. At the time I was looking at life insurance with my credit union, but I was procrastinating. For years, I prevented my wife from having surgery done. When my mother died in December of 2019, I was depressed and devastated. I decided she can get surgery work done because I didn't want to control her life, but I told her I prefer her not to do it. If she does it, she's on her own. I am not going to the appointments. I don't want to know anything because I don't approve of the surgery. I was trying to deter her from doing it on her own will. She decides to do it anyway and passed away 9 days after the surgery. I feel like she had the surgery done to build up her self-esteem when she's out cheating. Recently, I found more information on my wife's phone. It's hundreds of videos of her talking to her friends. The videos are 10 to 15 minutes long, but I found a video of her talking about being in love with a third guy. She insinuated they had sex, but I don't have anything concrete because I didn't watch all the videos. Most of the conversation with the friends are about work. I don't want to invest a large amount of time watching videos all day. If her family gets upset over the headstone, I'll probably watch all the videos to cement why she can't get one. In the end, I think about it every day and get upset, especially not being able to confront her. My girlfriend says I should be happy at the end of the day. I got the house, life insurance, and the kids. After thinking about it, she's right. If my wife was alive and I found out, my life would have been upside down. I would have to stay with one of my sisters and start over. I didn't know anything about hiring a private investigator or getting evidence to prove infidelity for divorce until listening to stories on Reddit. I probably wouldn't have been able to force the sale of the house since the house is solely in her name. My credit was bad at the time and I didn't want to ruin our chances, but I put half the payment down and paid half the mortgage every month. I blindly trusted her because she went to church all her life. She held many titles in church. I thought she was incapable of cheating. If she did cheat, she probably slept with one guy. But I don't know how many men she slept with, and I'm left to conclude. It could have been over 10 guys because my girlfriend found Facebook conversations on paper from 2011, 2013, and 2016 with her flirting. She was supposed to meet up with one guy, but one of the kids got sick. So, in the end, I got the house, 6 figures, the kids, and a girlfriend who will clean up and do what I want.